Carrie, would you mind moving your camera just a little bit so that you don't have as much of your ceiling? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's much better. Well, it looks like we have a good turnout here. Okay, so everyone's coming in. Welcome, everyone. This is an exciting COSLA webinar, and it's also in collaboration with the NASA at My Library project. And we're really excited to have all of you participate in this. And we want to make sure that you use the chat box as much as you want to tell us your thoughts. And let's get started here. Tim Carabini is our behind the scenes guy here for this. And thank you, Tim, for all of that. And we're also going to be recording this. Let me go ahead and just a few housekeeping items to keep in mind. Please remain muted during the presentation, though I think, yeah, that would be nice if everyone can self-mute. I don't know if we have control over muting everyone, but please do that. Please share your questions and comments in the chat box. We will have a question and answer period at the very end, and we would love to have a really good discussion here with you on how you're thinking about STEM kits and does that fit into your state library plans moving forward. This session is recorded and the instructions for accessing it. Okay, so that's all good. I want to just kind of go over briefly what the purpose of this webinar is. It's to introduce the STEM Kit Program Guide for state libraries that was developed with NASA at My Library funding, and we had partners. We'll explain a little bit about our state library partners to you in a moment. But I'm going to also describe, I should say who I am, by the way. My name is Paul Duesenberry. I'm the principal investigator for the NASA at My Library project and the project director. And I have been working in the informal, education field for quite a few years. And for the last 10 or so years, we've been really engaged with public libraries across the country. So I'll explain that a little bit more about NASA at My Library in just a moment. The project was funded by NASA's Science Mission Directorate, and it has, I don't know if you can see that little circle diagram there, but it has 4 basic areas of research: planetary science, earth science, heliophysics, and astronomy and space and astrophysics. So that is what the purpose is. And again, I welcome all of you and thank you so much for being in attendance here and participating with us. My colleague, David Keeley, and I, David Keeley's from the Cornerstones of Science. He and I are going to give a brief overview of the NASA at My Library effort, especially as it focused in on the state library part of it. We're just so thankful to have 3 great presenters from 3 state libraries in Michigan, Idaho, and Maryland, and we'll be introducing all of them in just a little bit later in the presentation. I'm going to be showing a few slides about our evaluation results. Jen Jost from the Education Development Center just had a baby 2 days ago, so she's not going to be able to do that, and so I'm doing it for her. And so we're thankful that that she was able to give us some really cool results from her evaluation efforts. And then Christine Schupla from the Lunar and Planetary Institute is going to be actually talking a little bit about a cool opportunity for this year and next year that state libraries should really look at carefully to see if they would like to participate. And then we end with a Q&A and we can go on our merry ways. So let's get started with sort of an overview here. This is going to be pretty quick. So this is all part of science activation. I hope you can see that cool picture. It's NASA created it, and I think this is lovely. And NASA at My Library is part of about 27 organizations that are part of science activation. And we've been working, with NASA and with a variety of partners over the last 5 years, and are looking forward to another 2 years of work in this area. Some of our partners, we've obviously COSLA is a partner. The American Library Association has been working with us as well, Lunar and Planetary Institute. There's EDC, they do the evaluation, and then Cornerstones of Science. The lead organization for the project is the Space Science Institute and its National Center for Interactive Learning. And this is part of the Star Library Education Network. I'm hoping that most of you know something about StarNet. We do a lot of resources. We have a new website. So please go to our website. I'll show you the URL at the very end. But it has a lot of great resources and opportunities for not only state libraries, but for public libraries to engage in. I'm going to be turning the mic over to David Keeley from Cornerstones of Science, and he's going to take us through how NASA at My Library involved the state libraries and how did we get to the point where we have this STEM activity guide. Thank you very much. So David.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, David Keeley. So glad you could all join us today. Over 5 years ago, we applied to NASA, received some funds. COSLA was an important partner with us. We solicited state library agencies around the country to participate. We started with 4 pilots for the first year, and then we added 14 more. And it turned out to be this terrific group of state library folks who worked with us, as I say, for over 5 years. Our hypothesis, if you will, when we approached NASA was that state library agencies are an excellent doorway out to public libraries around the country. And after 5 years, we're absolutely convinced that that is so true. Today we have some great state library presenters, including Kathy Lancaster from Michigan, Dina Brown from Idaho, and Carrie Sanders and LaShawn Miles from Maryland. Paul, do you want to flip that slide? This shows you the states that we were working in. Pretty good distribution all around the country, big states, small states, rural states, urban states. Paul, remind me, the little yellow icons are where we hosted state library conferences, is that right?
David, those are just the locations. I think those are like Olympia, for example, was the seat for the Washington State Library.
Okay.
Yeah. And
so you can see the blue were the 4 pilots that I mentioned, and then the green that we subsequently added. Paul, next slide.
Okay.
This slide just kind of is a schematic for you to provide some context for what the project was all about. You can see right at the top, I'll walk through this in a minute. You can see right at the top where state library agencies received kits that were developed by the Space Science Institute and Cornerstones. They received a variety of resource materials, promotional materials, a good deal of professional development opportunities for the state library agencies to feel comfortable circulating the kits. They, in turn, had those kits available for circulation to public libraries in their state. They set up systems that work for them. And those 3 larger white boxes going left to right, you can see that we had a variety of kits that I mentioned. We had professional development for state library agency staff. And then we also had a number of subject matter experts through the Night Sky Network, Solar System Ambassadors, and it turns out a number of local subject matter experts like high school science teachers, like local astronomy clubs, like local planetariums, those people who either professionally or avocationally are really excited about Earth and space science and state library agencies, public libraries were able to engage to varying degrees these subject matter experts in offering programs in public libraries. They could have mentored public library staff for them to feel comfortable using earth and space science materials. And so that is kind of how this portion of the project, as Paul mentioned, NASA My Library has a number of features. State library agencies were an important part of that exercise. Paul, do you want to go to the next one? We created, as I mentioned, 2 different circulating kits that the state libraries had available on their websites and other mechanisms that they then loaned out to different public libraries in their state. And you can see that they were pretty robust with a variety of handouts and science equipment that public libraries could use to host programs in their public libraries. The real nut of what this whole webinar is about today is that we created this STEM Kit program guide for state library agencies. I know that CASLA has sent out a link for all of you to be able to take a look at that beforehand. And the only piece I wanted to emphasize here is that this guide is kind of a best practices guide. While the 18 state libraries did a variety of things with the kits, we were really looking for the best practices that emerged from those 18 state library agencies. And we were looking for, where it happened in more than one state. So this 40, 50-page document really presents some great insights about a kit program and how to circulate them. Next slide. This just shows you that there were really 4 pieces that the guide covers. It was all about the STEM kits themselves, the training that was offered, our intention to engage underserved and underrepresented STEM audiences under the equity hallmark, and then also under subject matter experts. And the focus of our presentation today really is for you all to hear directly from Michigan, Idaho, and Maryland firsthand their experiences with circulating the kits, because we thought, while you can read the guide and have it as a resource for you, hearing firsthand from some of your colleagues about the experience that they had with circulating kits would be the most important thing to you. So with that, Kathy, it is all yours from Michigan.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Big thanks to Paul and Stephanie and David and everybody who has brought us NASA at My Library. It's been years of work and dedication, but also I think a lot of these familiar faces on the Zoom chat can agree with me that it's really nice to have an entity outside of libraries that actually listens to libraries and takes our feedback and works with us and continues to support the work that our public libraries do in their community. So thank you all for having us today. I wanted to start with kind of the origin story of how this came about for Michigan. And of course, in the chat or, if by a thumbs up or whatnot, who doesn't remember the solar eclipse of 2017, right? That was pretty big stuff. And in Michigan, we only had about 30 to 40% totality. And about a year ahead of time, I had a random email from somebody at StarNet, maybe it was Annie, about solar glasses and how libraries could get a package of solar glasses. So I sent that out in August of 2016. Fast forward to about a month before the eclipse, and suddenly people were clamoring for glasses. And we found out that the media had gotten a hold of the fact that libraries would have glasses. So everybody was contacting their local libraries, and when they couldn't get them at their local libraries, they were literally driving an hour or more away to get solar glasses. And it became such a big thing. In the end, StarNet came through for us. We had distributed 17,865 pairs of solar glasses in Michigan. And the next thing that came across my radar was that 3 Michigan public libraries had been selected for NASA at my library. And I began seeing a little more press about it and a little more interest. And so I noticed that library staff across the state were really intrigued by NASA at my library. And I knew I had to keep my eyes open for more opportunity. So next slide, Paul. Great. So of course, 2017 wrapped up, and you know, at the end of that year, I was contacted about a possible pilot project, and I jumped in on the chance to collaborate on behalf of Michigan's public libraries. And the next thing I knew, it was February 2018, I found myself in Denver. And I was joined with South Carolina State Library and Washington State Library, as well as North Dakota State Library. And we were like that original NASA at my library cohort. And we got to have some fun with the other libraries. You can see that photo there is a bunch of telescopes and images lined up from our training out in Denver. And that was really cool. So we got to hands-on experience some of the projects that the public library staff were going to be doing. But then we also spent a lot of time in a room kind of going over all the fine points. Not every state library operates the same, as we're all aware. Lots of ins and outs of that. And we really worked hard to work on those kinks. And in the end, the Library of Michigan was able to create 16 circulating kits. So we made 8 of the Sun, Earth, Moon connections and 8 of the Be a NASA Detective kits. And patrons are able to join their libraries to model, sorry, barking dog. So they were able to model both lunar and solar eclipses with easy to use tools and investigate those vast distances out in our solar system using these kits with their patrons. So we also purchased KitKeeper to reserve kits and help circulate them. And you'll hear more about all the different systems in a few minutes with Deanna. And as we kicked off the program, State Librarian Randy Riley really said it best. He said that the end goal of NASA at my library is to get STEM training to communities that may not have access to many STEM resources, and that public libraries make for an engaging site for that project. And that is so very true. Next slide, Paul. So we did get that training out to them. We had webinars. We had a specific one about solar system ambassadors and NASA's Night Sky Network. We also did in-person hands-on training thanks to the Longway Planetarium in Flint, Michigan. And those trainings explored each kit. They made the library staff feel comfortable with space science. And by December of 2018, we trained approximately 200 library staff. So there was an overwhelming positivity about the training. You know, we all have those same LSTA questions we have to ask after our trainings. And we did not drop below 98% agreement on all of those evaluations combined. So a couple of quotes I just thought I'd share with you that were fun. One librarian said, you know, how affordable programming for NASA can be. Crafts are very child teen friendly without costing too much. You know, they were very surprised about that. Another quote was that space doesn't have to be scary or intimidating. Another one, science is for everyone. And my favorite was space is cool. Next slide, Paul. So the voyage continues. I really can't help with the cheesy space references. Why would you when you're working with StarNet and NASA? But as I mentioned, all in the cohort, you know, from the 4 original state libraries to all of us in the end contributed to this guide. It's wonderfully laid out, a very clear table of contents, and you can jump around in between. If you haven't taken a look, make sure you do. And everything's adaptable for your state library. So we know that you'll have to make some changes to do what suits you best. But also for your frontline librarians, there's so many great resources. The Clearinghouse was wonderful. You know, we had summer reading a universe of stories that year that we rolled out our kits, and that was super popular. As well as STEAM at home. So they have lots of great STEAM projects to take home while schools and libraries are closed at this time here in Michigan. A majority of them still are working or schooling from home. They also have lots of webinars and live viewing opportunities, which are kind of cool. So now in my office, I get made fun of for how many times I say NASA. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Deanna in Idaho to take you on a bit of a deeper dive into setting this up at your state library.
Thanks, Kathy. This is Dina Brown, and I'm from the Idaho Commission for Libraries. And so funny you should bring up that you get made fun of for mentioning NASA at your state library. Earlier today, someone, you know, there's a general question form for our agency that people can submit questions. And someone forwarded me one earlier today where a question had come through asking if aliens were real. Wasn't clear though. They figured I was the best person to send it to. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the mechanisms and systems that we put in place for this program. When I dove into the NASA at My Library program, I was very new at the commission. I had just started, and so some colleagues of mine are the ones that had submitted the application for the program, and I'm the one that they passed it off to and kind of ran with it. So the first question I had for myself when all of this amazing stuff ended up in my office, it was magical, was how do I get this cool stuff out there to other people? And obviously there were, to get libraries involved, there were going to be some outward facing systems. And working with colleagues internally, they had a number of systems already in place that they thought would do the job. I can tell you that it did do the job, but I would not recommend trying to cobble together a whole bunch of systems. As you can see, we had a couple of calendaring systems and email and a cataloging system and an online form for people to fill out. In hindsight, I really wish that I had put funds aside to purchase some sort of purpose-built system. So like KitKeeper that Kathy referred to, I know that SpringShare has an option that works, and there are some tool libraries that have some tools that you can look into as well. So I needed to figure out how to make it easy for public libraries to be able to request having one of these kits or multiple kits sent to them. So I wanted to make it easy for them. I also wanted to not put a huge burden on us internally to make that happen. And so one of the things that we learned from that process, which used a number of the previous systems, is that people really liked being able to have kind of a self-service component. So they like to be able to go and see a calendar where they could figure out where they could maybe slot themselves in. So rather than just blindly sending an email request in, the feedback that we got was that people really liked being able to see, okay, you know, it's going to be available for these 2 weeks. We've got a blank spot in our calendar and to be able to slot people in. The other thing we did is we had the name of the library and their location on all of those calendar reservations. So libraries could go and see if a neighboring library had the kit, and then they could coordinate on their own with them to maybe have the kit at their library for a couple of days. You know, maybe they didn't need it for the full period, but wanted it for a couple of days. And so that helped kind of facilitate some networking between them as well. So the kit goes out to libraries, they get all excited about it, they use it, and then they've got to send it back to us so that we can ship it off to the next library. And one of the issues that that my support staff was struggling with was return labels were getting lost, and it just seemed like whatever system we chose, for whatever reason, it just was, for some reason, people were losing them on the other end. So what we decided is we were going to send it every way possible. So that way, any possible way we could get them the return label, they would have access to it. So not only did we tuck one in the box, but we were able to email people a PDF version. And certainly if they lost the email and or the physical one, we could always send them an updated one as well. Sometimes what happened is we'd put the physical one in the envelope that you'd stick on top, and people wouldn't open that to look in it, or it'd get slid in somewhere around the edge of the box and they didn't really see it. So communication was really key as far as making sure that the kits were coming and going in a timely fashion. And there was a lot of excitement for the program, and that excitement grew and reached other libraries. And so I think thanking libraries for participating in this program was something that, in hindsight and kind of reflecting back, I think I would like to incentivize people by giving them a thank you item for completing the survey. I think our survey response was still pretty good, but I think it could have been higher. And I'm wondering if people knew that they would get, you know, an extra book or some other sort of item that was something similar from the kits, if that would have increased our numbers for survey completion. Next slide, please, Paul. So that was kind of some broad lessons learned from getting the stuff out there. When the boxes arrived in the library, the first question I asked myself was, how do I get staff excited about this? And admittedly, it was kind of overwhelming for myself, being a new staff person, not really knowing how to dive into this. So, and not having a good bead on the expertise of all of my colleagues yet. So what I did is I invited them to come play at lunch. And so I hosted a series that I called NASA at Lunch. And I think I did it for over the course of a couple of weeks, and I did it maybe 3 times a week. And I just went and set up in our large training room and had the kits set out and said that we were going to focus on a couple of the activities each time. And that was a great opportunity for my colleagues to start to have an understanding of what the contents of the kits were, and also generated some great discussions with them about how to incorporate some of this content into their trainings, which brings me to the next one, which is mini trainings. So while we had the KIT program going on, one of the things that we did is we really incorporated even just a little bit of the NASA at My Library program into almost all of our face-to-face trainings that we did. And so that could be everything from a really hands-on, we're going to work through a few of these activities and have you brainstorm about doing them at your library, all the way down to just having the kit available maybe during a break, during a training, for people to come and take a look at it, to just kind of start becoming familiar with it. So getting the word out in ways that was a pretty low stakes for colleagues that already had other trainings that they were planning. Oops, I forgot to update the text on this one. So I also highly recommend hiring an expert. And so one of the things that we did is I worked with the Youth Services Department, and they contributed some funds to hire someone to come and do some training specifically on space science. And that was, I'm pretty sure that was someone that Kathy directed us to. And I know that was a wonderful experience at the Youth Services trainings that were happening while the program was going on. And lastly, make it hands-on and fun. People are much more likely to remember what they're learning when they're having fun. It's giving them an experience that then they're able to talk to somebody else about. You know, if you're having fun, you're more likely to talk about it with someone else, which means that they're more likely to become interested in it as well. And with that, I think I'm passing it over to Carrie and LaShawn.
Thank you so very much. Hello everyone. My name is LaShawn Miles. I'm the Youth Services Librarian at the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, which is part of the Maryland State Library, in which Carrie Sanders is the Youth Services Coordinator there. So part of this NASA at My Library program, we knew coming in that it was an emphasis for all of our state library partners to develop an underserved and underrepresented STEM audience strategy that guided our work. So it wasn't very hard for us to select our audience. The Maryland State Library project focus was to make our kits accessible for those who are blind or have visual impairment. There's definitely a need nationwide to provide services and remove barriers for this particular audience. There are more than 560,000 American youths under the age of 18 and more than 7,500 Maryland youths who have a visual impairment. So how did we engage this particular audience? We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we move on to the next slide, I want you to just take a look at that kit that's featured on this slide here. This is actually one of the items that we purchased to supplement the NASA at My Library activities. We're going to talk about that in a few moments in the next slide. So Paul, you can go ahead and advance. Okay. So engaging our audience. So what do we do? First of all, we wanted to look at some of the barriers that blind youth face in learning science. And according to research, there are many barriers that prevent blind students from accessing math and science curriculum, especially in our schools. Barriers lead to some very low numbers of blind and visually impaired people who are actually pursuing careers in math and science or degrees in higher education. Some of those barriers include a lack of accommodations and accessible curriculum materials, and a lack of knowledge by people who actually teach on how to teach students who are blind or visually impaired. So all of these problems compound and lead to poorly educated blind youth, limited prospects in employment. So we took all these things in account as how we would augment our kits for our audience. So what did we do to actually amend the kits? So we decided we would not duplicate our kits like some other state partners, but we would change them to include accessible items for the blind and VI user. That impacted the actual number of kits we were able to provide, but that extra expense was well worth it because the impact was tremendous for both sighted and unsighted. We actually spent an additional about $500 per kit to make them accessible. So what we did, Maryland created 4 accessible kits that would travel with Kit 2. So on that slide, there's an image of our actual Kit 2. That's a Kit 2A and a Kit 2B, which included the accessible materials. Now, due to the time and expense to create these materials, we mainly focus on the content of Kit 2 and the facilitation guide. And we also knew that some of those activities that came with that guide did not translate into a viable activity for someone who was blind or visually impaired. And therefore, we had to include supplemental activities that we got from the Perkins School for the Blind, some excellent science lessons that we incorporated that would support the content that were inside those facilitation guides. Some of the materials that we actually purchased, many of them came from the American Printing House. We included a mini light box, which is a box that illuminates, and it helps the users to develop an awareness of light and color and objects. We had a talking non-contact infrared thermometer. Everyone should get one in their kit. All the kids loved it just because it talked. And then we had the Sense of Science Astronomy Science Kit, which included many tactile braille overlays that could be placed on that light box. And that's what you saw in the prior slide. We included a large print guidebook with easy to follow activities, a glossary, and a whole list of resources and related websites. So we wanted to make sure we were actually testing these kits with the intended audience. And on the STEM Kit program guide, it mentioned that one of the challenges some of the state libraries face was actually knowing if the public library programs were using these kits for the intended audience. So what we decided to do, we hosted several NASA at My Library programs with the National Federation of the Blind's Bell Academy. And the NFB Bell Academy, which stands for Braille Enrichment for Literacy and Learning, is a nationwide summer program that prepares blind and low vision youth ages 4 through 12. We had 3 different sessions, just having a great time with those kids and learning with not only the students or the kids, but their instructors as well. And lastly, we just wanted to encourage our public libraries to use the materials. In our NASA at My Library roadshow trainings we held throughout the state, we made sure we designated time within those trainings to talk about accessibility. So we actually gave them disability etiquette criteria. We went through some of the kits and how they were accessible, and even tried out some of the activities in which we included. And the feedback was tremendous. But most important, we told them, don't just keep the accessible materials in the box, put them out with all the other activities as well. And what we found out is that they thoroughly enjoyed the accessible materials. The kids enjoyed the Braille. They enjoyed working with the tactile elements. It was just a pleasure for all kids, whether they designate themselves as visually impaired or not. And lastly, you can advance the slide now, Paul. Thank you. So lastly, this is just an example of some of the activities that we did supplement with the actual kit. So this is an activity from the Lunar Phases activity using the Oreo cookie, which is a fun activity. But for those who are blind on VI, we included an activity from Perkins, which uses texture. So sandpaper and textured paper, again, teaching the same concept, but using it in a way that someone who is blind or visually impaired could learn the content in a more accessible way. Now, we're going to switch over to Carrie, who's going to now talk about how we work with our subject matter experts as well.
Thank you, LaShawn. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here this afternoon. I loved this part of the project. Maybe now I just even especially love it that we were able to be out and about and in person, which, we were not able to do so easily right now, but we were thrilled to be able to work with the subject matter experts that were a part of this project. And it was just a joy, not only for us, LaShawn and myself, to just kind of begin those connections through the state level, but to also make the connections with these 2 networks with our public library staff. It meant so much to them. So we were able to do 3 NASA Cosmic Roadshows for our staff training, is what we call them. And we went to the different regions around the state. We were fortunate enough that the Solar System Ambassadors, which is a national vetted program or network of those who have gone through the NASA curriculum and become ambassadors. We had one of those in one of our Maryland public libraries, and she was an English major, but she always loved astronomy. So this was just a passion of hers, and she wanted to become a Solar System Ambassador. So we were really fortunate to be able to embed her and work her into our training. She brought so much to those trainings just because she was not a scientist and didn't have that technical expertise, but still very much engaged with our public library staff and show them that this is all very doable and very easy to learn, which is important for me too, because I am not a scientist. And I was like, how can I go and really be able to translate these activities and provide the training with my public library staff if I'm not a real science buff, astronomy buff. And I learned just along the way too, that these are all very doable activities and that all of us could engage and enjoy them and bring them then to our kids and our youth. So we were really fortunate to be able to work with the Solar System Ambassador Network. And also at the other end, we were able to engage with 3 local astronomy clubs in the different regionals areas where we were in Maryland, and that happened through the Night Sky Network. And those are pure volunteers who are also passionate about astronomy and stargazing in their community. And these are a couple of pictures of where they came and they set up at our trainings. The 3 different trainings that we had all implemented those different astronomy clubs in different ways. They kind of played a different role, but in each training, they provided invaluable information for our library staff. They did a little tutorial on the telescope that's included in the kits. And they helped with the star parties, took us outside and helped us really engage and interact with the different things that they can bring to a program. Our public library staff was so appreciative of making these connections locally that they were not aware of the local astronomy clubs, and they definitely were excited to work with them for future planning. And I think that's been happening even virtually, if not in person. So this was just a real wonderful aspect of the whole Now Set My Library project, to engage with the subject matter experts. It made everyone feel, just like Kathy said, that science can be for everyone. And it built a lot of great community connections, which was just a boon, a bonus for the whole project. And I think that is everything that I wanted to share in regards to working with those subject matter experts. And I'll turn it over to Paul to talk a little bit about the assessment of the project.
Thanks, Carrie. I just wanted to follow up on what Carrie was saying, that every state has a number of universities and colleges and community colleges, places, high schools, that places where public library staff can go and begin these relationship building things that could turn into, really best friends forever kind of a thing. There's a tremendous amount of goodwill and interest, I think, in higher education, especially, to really help and to help organizations like state libraries and their local public libraries to, achieve their mission. And if it's basically, it just takes a call, just send an email, follow up with a phone call the old fashioned way, and off you go. And hopefully when things break a little bit from the COVID thing, people can have meetings at coffee places and, a coffee shop or something. I wanted to quickly just show a few of these results from the Education Development Center on the evaluation. Remember that there's 2 parts to this. One is that the public libraries who received the kits were asked to fill out a questionnaire, a survey, basically. And so the first 2 results, and then also the patrons were able to to provide some amount of results back to the program as well. And then, of course, the state library staff who were involved in it, the 18 state libraries that were involved, also provided input. So the first 2 results are for the on the patron level, and then the last one will be from the SLA staff side. So there was patrons enjoyed the programs. They really found that they were hands-on and discovery-based, and they promoted positive attitudes towards STEM and STEM careers, which is really important, I think, for all libraries to be thinking about. How do you engage a variety of ages in science and engineering and basically all of STEM? And I just wanted to show to kind of read this little quote down here. We received many positive compliments from our participants. One of the best ones was a little boy who was so intrigued by the UV beads and flashlight. That was, I believe, in Kit 1. He kept coming back to play with the beads after he came up to a staff member and said, "I guess I made my decision. I'm just going to have to be a scientist when I grow up." So that was kind of this little boy. It was just, there's so many of these kind of quotes that demonstrate and indicate how people were engaged in these activities, and the fact that their library was able to have a program like that. So that was cool. So here's some data, if you will. So public libraries strongly agreed that that they're interested in more of these kind of STEM kits. So it seems to us that there is a market throughout the country for state libraries to really be thinking about, should you be distributing STEM kits or things like that. Backpacks. I know Colorado State Library does a backpack program with the state parks, which is very successful. So that's very similar to this one. But there's a large percentage of public libraries who were involved in this program said that they would be interested in receiving more kits and that the kits were easy to use. So that's really gratifying, I think. You know, having vetted, ready to go, program in a box resources was really valued by the public libraries. And you heard from our state library presenters how important and engaged that training program was. It wasn't just that one location, it was kind of all over the place, you know, all over the state. So it's really important to have a variety of training opportunities, I think, for public library staff to get comfortable, you know, with these materials if you decide to do your own STEM kit program. And then they could also be adapted for a variety of ages. And as LaShawn said, that you could actually, you know, put in all sorts of diversity kinds of programs too, like for the blind and all of that. So it's really great. They're very customizable. I'm going to move on because I want to get to our chat here, our Q&A part. So lastly, this is the SLA part now. All the SLAs in the program felt confident and interested in you know, doing a kit program. And so you can see the data there. It's, you know, pretty much everyone said that. All SLAs felt more confident and interested in supporting Earth and space science related programming. That's cool. We had I didn't know if we told you, but besides the eclipse, like Kathy mentioned, which was her origin story, the end of that origin story was leading up to the Universe of Stories, which was in 2019, the summer of 2019. We also called it Summer of Space for StarNet. Universe of Stories was a CSLP program, but thousands and thousands of libraries across the country were engaged in that program. We had some 4,800 sign up through NASA at My Library to be engaged, way beyond, you know, the impacts of this program. But it just goes to show you that I think that Americans are very interested and enthusiastic around these kind of national programs. Most 89% plan to continue circulating existing kits, which is really gratifying to the project team. Many plan to create and circulate additional ones with new materials. So that's kind of the last quote here is, I became more aware about all the programs NASA offers, and Lord knows they offer a lot of different kinds of programs, and the StarNet resources. It has made me more comfortable and able to share those resources out with the libraries. And I do want to also follow up, just making a plug for the Night Sky Network and the Solar System Ambassadors, which are funded programs by NASA's Science Mission Directorate. And I just also want to keep encouraging all the state libraries here on this call to be thinking about their universities and colleges to help them maybe with some other content areas, which would be really great. So that's it for this one. I want to now turn the mic over to Christine Shupla from the Lunar and Planetary Institute. And I think she has an opportunity for these next 2 years, this year and next year. So Christine.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone, and it's nice to meet you. The NASA at My Library, we recognize the value, the tremendous value that state libraries bring, state library agencies bring to disseminating, to working with libraries across the country, and the work that you do and the experience that you have. So what we would like to do for this year and next year is convene an advisory panel made up of state library agencies. And so those advisors would provide input to help us as we move forward in activities and planning for the next couple of years, as we plan to better serve libraries, as we explore how we can better support the state library agencies in their own missions, as we connect libraries to appropriate activities, resources, and potential partners like NASA partners and universities and others in their states. We would like your help as we improve how we serve audiences, particularly those underrepresented in STEM. And as one of the things that we're going to be doing is working on a suite of digital STEAM facilitation tutorials. And so we'd like input on that as well, and our professional development efforts. So we'd like these advisors to meet with us about once a month and provide input on these things and how we can help libraries to incorporate NASA, Earth and space science resources in their programs and help us to disseminate these things, resources, opportunities within their own states, but also disseminate things to other SLAs. Next slide. One of the key things that's coming up, the James Webb Space Telescope is launching this fall, so that's an area that we're going to be looking at. There are some benefits to you. One of the benefits, of course, is those who are participating would have the ability to support their own professional development that they're planning for their state, networking with each other, access to these digital resources that we're forming and providing us input as we develop them. Physical resources, as they become available, we've got some money set aside to send materials that we receive from NASA to some of the state library agencies as appropriate. And of course, building collaborations with each other, but within your own states as well. So what we'd like from you, if you do want to join us in this, is to submit a letter of interest to me. By March the 15th, we anticipate making those selections and responding to all letters by April 1st. That isn't a fooling, no fool there. And we'll work with the advisors to schedule the first meeting, ideally sometime in April. We have some paperwork on this with more details about all of it that we plan on disseminating within the next couple of weeks. So pretty soon.
Thank you so much, Christine. I just wanted to add that we're meeting with Tim Carabini, I believe, next week, and we're going to go over some of the details of this opportunity. And once that flyer information piece is complete, then hopefully he'll be able to get it out to the SLA network, so the COSLA network. So that sounds great. Well, I think that we're just, my gosh, I think we're really getting close to the Q&A period here. And David, why don't you come back and join me a little bit? And I know Stephanie and maybe Tim is out there looking at the chats. And do you have any questions for us? And not just for us, really, but for the three libraries, the state libraries that presented today. They have so much knowledge about what worked well and what didn't. And as they said, and as we said, that all the state libraries really participated in the genesis of that guide. And the whole organization of the guide actually was driven by the lessons learned, promising practices that came out of this program, working with all of them. So is there somebody who can help us maybe with the chat? Are there some things that have come out? Stephanie, why don't you, and David and others too, why don't we just have a little session here on kind of discussing what people are thinking about.
Yeah, Paul. So Sharon asked, can you give me an estimate of the cost involved in providing the kits, delivery, etc.?
Well, I can estimate that probably the kit, each of the kits probably to not so much develop, because a lot of the pieces were taken out of another kit program that we had for NASA at My Library that worked directly with about 75 partner libraries. But I would say that if you wanted to buy it off the shelf, it probably is a couple $100, 250. Maybe if you have a really cool telescope in there, you could spend a lot of money on telescopes. So, I think it might go at the most $300, something like that. But I think that seems like a reasonable range, $200 to $300 probably for a kit like those two.
And I'll chime in, Paul. Joe out of Washington Library, and he created a spreadsheet with a great list to like all the links and the total cost of the first kit. And then I did the same with the second kit. And we combined the spreadsheets and have that available if anyone is interested.
Nice.
I'll put my email in the chat.
Oh, thank you, Kathy. Excellent resource. My gosh, yes. And also in the guide itself, one thing that we didn't talk about is the incredible websites that the state libraries created for getting the word out to their public libraries. They you know, that was kind of how they were introducing the program. And I'm not sure how it was connected into the registration or reservation system, but those, they were wonderful, I think, resources too for promotion. And that's something too, that if you're going to do your own STEM kit program, you have to have visibility. You have to have the training, but I think visibility and promotion is really critical. So that's
Yeah,
a
and
good question.
in the first or second page of the SLA guide that you all now have a copy of, there are hot links to each of the state library web pages for this program, and you'll find a lot of terrific materials there.
What's another cool question that we can discuss? One thing I wanted to just, okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, there seems to be some questions around the Braille books as well that NASA provided.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, it was one of the things that we really were lucky to and fortunate to have partners with. NASA has done a number of these science Braille books. They had ones on the moon. They had small bodies of the solar system. So we were able to get a number of copies of these tactile books. There's a difference, I suppose, between the Braille and the tactile. What NASA did was they had a little Braille in there, but really they created tactile environments of the moon, of asteroids, of objects in the solar system, if you will, places on Earth and things like that. So people could actually feel the relief, the sort of the topographic relief of the objects that they were talking about. Then they had a link in those Braille, in those tactile books, that went off to a website, and they had, you could hear from a scientist, you could listen to people who are on missions discovering those objects and visiting those objects. And it was really a cool system. And we were just so fortunate to have the ability to put in these Braille, I call them Braille, but really they're tactile books, which is a little different, into these kits. So both kits had them. And if you go to their website, and again, you can see all of this read about it in that guide. There's some good links there. Just go to that web page, and it's just, to me, an amazing resource. So if you're interested in that and others, I think that that's a good place to start.
Another question is, I'm curious about the StarNet Community Dialogue Guide. Does that come into play with the kits in any way?
Well, the dialogue, the community dialogue, is like a relationship building process, if you will, for partnership building. We talk about that as part of our DEIA, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And you can go to the StarNet website, and there you see the link there, starnetlibraries.org. It's brand new. This has been recently refurbed. I think it looks great. Please go there and let us know what you think. But you can find out all the resources around community dialogues. And, ALA also has their own relationship building resources, Libraries Transform. So there's a number of ways that state libraries and public libraries can work together to utilize these resources effectively to build those partnerships which are so key to success. I do encourage you to take a look at the StarNet site, and then you can find by the way, it was mentioned too about the STEM Activity Clearinghouse, which has over 500 activities in there. Many of them are in collections. They can be binned in collections, or they're just separate, but we do have collections on all sorts of different topic areas. And you can get to that clearinghouse right there from the StarNet site. Okay, well, do any of our presenters have any last thoughts to maybe for the group before we conclude?
I'll just say, give it a try. You know, we're still going to be circulating our kits once we're back in our building. And I'm hoping to continue to grow kit circulation and STEM programming
Nice.
and engagement with libraries here in Michigan. So
I would also encourage, you could even pull out, some of these activities are doable in a virtual environment as well, some hands-on. It could be coupled with some take and make kits that youth could be doing at home, and then you could have them share what they've created. So they're very adaptable, very flexible, and a lot of potential for some hands-on activities that I think we're all looking to find and provide for our families.
You know, just maybe one last thing to be thinking about is that in 2 years or year and a half, say, there's going to be another CSLP summer learning event. It's all about oceanography, but we're thinking of that as water, which is very earth science based. And so NASA at My Library is really going to be doing a major event campaign around that water theme for libraries across the country, similar to what it's done in the past. And we've been so fortunate to have libraries, kind of just leap up and want to participate because they're so enthusiastic. I think water is going to be a very important resource that everyone will be concerned about, but also thinking about how precious it is and how important it is for community health. Anyway, that's about a year and a half from now. And lastly, just remember about Christine Schupla's request for state libraries to participate in this panel, or the state library panel. It would be so great to have six representatives, I think, on that panel to help guide some of these decisions as we're reaching, over the next couple years. So again, I want to thank David. Thank you so much, and Tim. It's just been wonderful to be working with you guys. Presenters, library folks, thank you so much. You were wonderful to work with, and I hope that our paths will cross many times in the future. It was so great to be able to learn from the state libraries. We learned so much, way more than we probably were able to share with them. They just taught us so much. And all of you who are out there in the country, please, think about Earth and space science as great engagement topics for public libraries in your states. So again, thank you so much, and we'll hopefully be in touch in the future. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.